All right, welcome everyone. Thanks again for tuning in for our show. I'm going to pass it off over to Susan. I'm Dan Horgan, by the way, with Collabel, but Susan's going to lead us through a really exciting and fun activity today. So Susan, take us away.
All right. We're going to think about leadership in a different way. We're going to pause and we're going to use quotes. This activity will take you longer than 10 minutes. But the concepts and the quotes come from the new book, Great Group Leaders. And it's not going to let me advance the slide that way. Of course not. That would be too easy. There we go. So we have two quotes here. I'm calling this, for lack of a better term, because I haven't named this, but it's a tool I've used in many trainings, leadership umph. There are times when we all need some umph. Either we're tired, we're discouraged, the change isn't happening the way that we want to see it, or we just look at something to refuel us or to get our jazz and groove back. And so here are two quotes. I'm going to ask Dan to read them. And for simplicity's sake, you're just going to hold up one finger or two fingers for the quote that most resonates with you at this point.
All right, so quote number one is, at the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are and you know what you want. Quote number two is, the most important thing is that we are able to be one-to-one, you and I, with each other at the moment. If we can be present to the moment with the person that we happen to be with, that's what's important. So which one resonates with you the most? Number one or number two?
Which what?
One or two. Which do you want?
So I see a lot of ones, a couple of twos. Since we're a small group, I'm just going to ask, is anybody willing to share who chose number one? What is it about that quote that's speaking to you right now?
Well, they're both really wonderful quotes, so it was tough, but I think just that idea of kind of a deeper knowing amidst an unsettling and anxious, anxiety-inducing environment feels really resonant right now.
I think it's not so much that I'm attracted to one as unattracted to the other, because this being able to be one-on-one is less noticeable these days. And so while I would ordinarily resonate with Mr. Rogers, the child in me says, I need to abandon the post for a minute.
So somebody who did like the second quote, what was it about it that did resonate with you, even in this crazy time?
Susan, I'll share, and similar to Jackie, I love both of these quotes, but I'm from Pittsburgh, where Mr. Rogers is from. So I felt like I had an affinity that I had to go with Mr. Rogers, even though I like both of them pretty much the same.
I'll tell you, number two, the business that has spoken to me was my, she has MS. It's really bad. And she has worked hard to stay present with, not let the disease take over. And she told me one time, she said, I named my house. And I said, okay, you know, that's kind of like, you know, that's what big houses get as a name. Little houses, not so much. And she said, yes, I named it The Moment. So she said, I'm in the moment. And that has stayed with me for a long time, that it's really important to be in the moment and not worrying about everything else under the sun, especially when you got a ton of things you can worry about. So have to work at being in the moment, but it's also home.
I love that.
All right, let me see if I can get back. There we go. We'll get to another one. Dan, you want to read these two?
Sure. So quote number one, Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. Quote number 2, your work is to discover your work, and then, with all your heart, to give yourself to it.
So these two, which one is calling to you about your own leadership potential? I'm going to give it a little bit different question. All right, so I don't know that I saw any ones. Did anybody pick the first one? Somebody want to say something about the second quote then?
I'll say something about the first one. Yeah, we don't make our life. We're just a part of the whole web, as he's saying there. And so actually, I'd like to combine the two quotes, but yeah, so you've got a strand, and what you do with it is up to you. Then hopefully you do a good job with what you do with your strand.
I picked number 1 because I'm used to strands being connecting guitar strings and violin strings, and you pluck one end of it, it vibrates all the way across. If it didn't, we'd have no music. And I think it's the music that we're after, and how integral we are to the process makes a difference. And I think the business of being a strand is a reminder of our connectedness.
Nice. Any thoughts about the second quote?
I've always heard the business about if you can find a job where it matches your passion, then you'll never really work. You'll just be enjoying life. And we've talked a lot about flow, getting in the moment, and just being able to go with that. And it's such an amazing experience to have that, even if it's out there in the garden or in some other fashion. But if it's with what you work, it's like your skills and your interests and your passions. That's really your work. It's not your job. But if it matches with your job, great. But however you are able to discover the gifts and skills that you have and put those to work in some fashion. Like I've loved this end of retirement. I didn't love the first end of it. But this end of retirement I have loved because I see my work as using who I am and what I have learned all these years.
Yeah, I read something the other day that was like, take me, all that I have, all that I am, and connect me to a purpose higher than myself. And like that was the intention that someone set every day. And I thought that was just beautiful. So in a face-to-face training, I'll often have like 5-6 quotes around the room and have people go and stand under them and talk with others in their group about that quote. In this setting, you could do the same thing by putting people in a breakout room. So putting everyone who selected 1 into a breakout room, everyone who selected 2, putting them in a breakout room and letting them talk a little bit and then coming back to the big group. It's a little more difficult virtually to put several quotes and have them readable. But the other way that you can get into some leadership conversations is to put up images. So in Great Group Leaders, I use some references about leading well with others from Star Trek. And so one simple thing you could do is have people just identify which one of these as a leader speaks to me and why. And we don't necessarily have to do that right now, but I wanted to show the option. It doesn't have to be quotes. It can also be visuals. And then the other thing that I use in Great Group Leaders is references to Star Wars. when I did a search on leadership, I don't even remember. It was millions of responses of people who just put in the word like leadership. And so we have this thing, we want to understand it, we want to know it. When I watched all these videos, there were videos and reviews of people trying to define it. So I'm looking at athletes and yogis and teachers and all sorts of folks, and there was no one thing, no one way. But leadership starts within. And so I use references to the force. And so, just playing with it so you can have leaders that you identify with and what these people mean to you. And it doesn't have to be Star Trek and Star Wars. I did that because it's kind of fun with the book. You could put real leaders out there, or you can put people from your community. We could have had the baby yoga and talked about it that way. So just wanted to share an activity that would definitely take a little bit longer than 10 minutes, and that you can facilitate it by doing fingers. You can facilitate it by using the chat feature and doing one or two in there. If you know how to do the rename, you can have people go into their Brady Box bunch and select under the 3 dots, rename, and put their name in 1 or 2. And then I'd send you guys off and we'd have a little break, and I could put all the 1s into a breakout room and all the 2s in the breakout room, and so forth. So just another activity that you can have. I like the quotes and I like images because you can kind of just refuel yourself. Anything you want to add to that, Dan?
Yeah, I just want to give 2 quick, I'll say they're little bonus tidbits for any facilitator out there. Number 1 is you can do this exercise where first you brainstorm with your participants who they would identify as leaders, and particularly have them think about different types of leadership styles, and then use those characters in the way that Susan was showing the example of the different images. But use the examples that the young people come up with so that they sort of see themselves in the way the activity unfolds. Another way that I've done something similar is when I had an opportunity to workshops with different groups of young leaders, I've actually had the first workshop group actually write their own quotes related to leadership and the experience that they just went through. And then I would use those quotes in the second workshop to be able to have the young leaders in that session reflect on which one really resonated with them the most and why. And then they got a chance to write their own quotes for the third workshop. So it sort of passed it on. And by the end, we had all these great quotes from the young leaders across the program. So just another way for them to see themselves in the words that are being shared back with them.
Love it. Love it. That's it. Thank you guys for being here and being part of highlighting leadership tips. Like, subscribe, tell others, and have a good day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.